good, it was a good lineup. I was happy with it.
I will call this meeting to order May 1st, and I would like to ask Director Hunt to lead us in the pledge of allegiance. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome all. Determination of a quorum.
Mr. President and all 5 board members are here. You have a quorum.
Item number 4. Item number 4. Excuse me. Approval of the agenda.
I move the agenda. A second.
All right. All those in favor,
Aye.
signify.
Aye.
All right, public comment. Members of the public may address the board at this time with regard to matters within the board's jurisdiction that are not listed on the agenda. State law prohibits the board of directors from discussing or taking action on items not included on the agenda. Members of the public will have the opportunity for public comment on any item listed on the agenda when it is addressed on the agenda. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes or less, or any public comments. All right, seeing none. I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Consent calendar.
I mean, calendar.
Consent calendar.
Since it's including the minutes, I noticed there was, under public testimony, page 4, it said, Thomas Falls Joshua Tree asked that if 2 of the board members are in the same district, how would this work out as far as representation? President Johnson replied that one of the board members would not be eligible to run, and I don't think that's accurate. I don't think that's what you said. They would both be able to run, but one of them would not be elected because they would be running against each other on the same ballot, correct?
Yeah, I didn't prepare the minutes, so I don't know
No, I was just
exactly what he
asking
said,
for
but yeah, just for,
accuracy, so-
yeah.
So I don't know if you remember specifically, Bob, what you said, but we could make that adjustment.
Sure. Yeah, it was in the context of once the map was approved, is how I was interpreting that, so we can go with that correction.
Good point, if I may.
Yes?
Just to be clear, these minutes are derived from the executive assistant reviewing the minutes of the board that are on the CD. And that is what was stated.
Okay.
If you want to correct it, that's fine, but it's not an error.
No, if that's what was stated, it's fine. I just thought it may have been an error, so.
All right, with those comments, any other corrections, additions, deletions?
I move we approve the consent calendar.
All right, second?
I'll second it.
All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, item number 7, the second reading and adoption of ordinance number 1910, establishing district-based elections. Ms. Jennifer Farrell, I'll turn it over to you.
Good evening. Tonight we are here on the 5th public meeting relating to the conversion to district-based elections. Based on our last 4 public meetings, both the public and the board have expressed interest in, or a preference for map number 103. Tonight before you is the second reading and adoption of ordinance number 1910, which, if adopted, would implement map number 103. And if you vote in favor of the ordinance tonight, what would occur next is that staff, being myself and probably Beverly, will be working with the registrar of voters to implement the map, and we might need to make some very minor adjustments in terms of streets and whatnot, but we'll be able to take the next steps at the staff level. So with that, unless there's any questions from the board or public comments, we'll just need a motion and a second and a vote to approve the ordinance.
Do we need the ordinance read for the minutes, or will they stand as they are written? Do we need to have it on tape?
We read by title for the first meeting, which is what we're required to do. We don't need to read it for the second meeting, and a reference to the ordinance number, I'm sure will be sufficient for the minutes.
I have a question. Is this it then? If we approve this, we're now going, we're districted?
Hopefully you don't ever have to see me again.
But it doesn't, question, it takes effect at the next election, November of 2020. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So ordinances become effective 30 days after adoption in terms of the conversion to district-based elections. This will be implemented in 2020 for that election, but there's no more public meetings that we need to have relating to the matter.
So even if we have a vacancy between now and then, it would be district-wide?
Yes.
Thank you.
Are there any public comments? Mr. Marquez?
We have not a public comment, but it's open to comment for this, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Hello, Marquez, Sunfair Community. I've looked at the maps that the district has been designing, or I don't know if it was the person that designed these, but the information that I have is I gave a map to each of the board of directors and also the manager. And I wish there was somebody here from the Copper Mountain Mesa would elaborate on their boundaries. But I'm just going to speak for the Sunfair community, which is District Number 1 as written. And the information that I have from the maps from the county, it states that approximately the northern boundary of Sunfair is Labrisa, south to 29 Palms Highway. And then on the west side is from Center Avenue, east to the Coyote Dry Lake. So the information I have about Copper Mountain Mesa, their northern boundary is the United States Marine Base, and it south to Labrisa Avenue, which is the northern boundary of Sunfair, and it goes from Border Avenue from the west east to the Joshua Tree boundary of 29 Palms. And like I said, you all have a map, and I highlighted it with the red line. But so right now, the district is contemplating on map 103 as the 5 district for the Joshua Basin Water District. And I also want to state that I don't know if special district has been notified of this redistricting of the Joshua Tree area, since Joshua Basin Water District is part of the special district of San Bernardino County. And if so, why or if they've not gone to the Board of Supervisors on this, or the Planning District on this, or for that fact, didn't go through LAFCO to find out if they could redistrict this Joshua Basin Water District to the 5 district that you're planning to do right now. So I hope somebody explains that you went through all this process instead of just doing it yourself through your consultant. And also that I hope that all this was done that I just mentioned.
Put that on the chair.
And that's the end of my comment. Thank you.
On the chair.
I'm not really quite sure. Jennifer, can you respond to any of that?
Jennifer, if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to respond to the first part of it. The way map 103 is drawn, District 1 incorporates, District 1 will incorporate the Copper Mountain Mesa community for the most part, and the Sunfair community for the most part. It also includes the area to the east of the Coyote Lake bed. So it's not the Sunfair Community District. It's District 1, which incorporates Copper Mountain Mesa area, the general Sunfair area, and the area east of Coyote Lake. And the other questions, we're going to have to defer to you, I think.
Yeah, with respect to any arguments that we need to go to LAFCO, we do not. LAFCO is if you're creating new agencies or splitting up old agencies. We're not doing that. We're just creating voting districts. This is all the same Joshua Basin Water District. It's just a different method to elect the board.
And as my understanding, the districts will just be numbered, they're not going to be named, be District 1, District 2, District 3. the consultants just kind of took our notes about the Sunbury District and the Copper Mountain Mesa and Panorama Heights. And
That's correct. The names were really just to, I think, assist in the discussion process. The districts will be numbered. We just wanted it's a rough estimate of the Copper Mesa Mountain area. As you recall, we have to balance them for population size. So because of that, we can't do just 5 neighborhoods effectively. They're going to have to be a little bit skewed in terms of borders so that we can get the population amounts right.
Yes, sir.
Tom Flowen, Joshua Tree North. We had, I think 3 years ago now, the lady from LAFCO here, Kathleen, thank you, I knew I'd get help with that. And she says that she said mostly that what they're concerned with is the overall boundary of the district, including the areas of influence that we have that aren't necessarily in the district. I think there's 2 of those. And also what we do within the district with regard to water service, water retail, and also sewer, which is up to date, or currently at least, is just a package treatment plant. And I don't think, I didn't hear her, I just listened to this again this morning. These are the hobbies I have. And there was nothing in there about the political activities that would take place. It's only the stuff that I just mentioned that she talked about from this podium right here.
Any other public comments? Board comments, Director Reynolds?
Well, just to reinforce, we went to great lengths discussing the options for districts and where and boundaries and how to go about doing it. And the subject of dividing it up into the areas like the Sunfair area, the Copper Mountain Mesa area, so on and so forth. We discussed that, I remember, and decided that wouldn't be appropriate to divide the population up to the ethnicity that we were after to comply with the law. And that was my understanding of one of the main reasons why we went to the map as we chose.
Director Unger?
I have nothing.
Director Hunt?
No comments?
Director Lippman?
I have nothing.
And I have none, so I will entertain a motion then to approve, is that what I'm doing?
Yep.
District-based elections, attachment F, resolution. Do I have a motion?
I move that we adopt ordinance number 19-10 of the Board of Directors of Joshua Tree Water District, establishing and implementing district-based elections for attachment F.
I'll second that.
Second. Any further discussion? Hearing none then, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
I think you should.
Roll call. Director Reynolds?
Aye.
Director Unger?
Aye.
Director Hunt?
Aye.
Director Leckman?
Aye.
And myself, aye. Moved and seconded and approved. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Item number 8,
Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you.
contracting with Tierra Verde Energy to conduct the next phase of solar feasibility study. Director Sauer, General Manager Sauer.
Okay, so our recommendation is that the board direct the general manager to retain Terra Verde Energy to conduct a feasibility study in order to prepare a request for proposal to install a solar project to offset electrical pumping costs at a cost not to exceed $37,000. You'll recall that in November of 2017, the board directed the general manager to pursue a grant from the California Energy Commission to examine the feasibility of a solar project. That feasibility study was completed and we received it in May of 2018. Since the start of this project, we've been working closely with the Eastern Municipal Water District. They are one of the leaders in Southern California in solar projects. In fact, AGM, Assistant General Manager Greer, myself, and Director Hund went over and visited with their staff to get a better grasp on how they handle solar projects. During that visit, they made it clear to us that they'd looked at several different companies that do this type of consulting work. They've chosen Terra Verde Energy since the start. The company does not build the solar projects. It's a company that assesses the feasibility and the needs of the project, all the way down to grading at the site, et cetera. And then, it's not part of this proposal for the $37,000, but then they would be the consultant that handled the request for proposals, which I'll get to at the end of this report. The Eastern Municipal employee that's responsible for the solar energy programs describes Terra Verde as very dedicated to providing a high level of customer service to Eastern Municipal. He considers them to be almost like an employee. Their customer service is excellent and their knowledge is wide-ranging and in-depth. So following this receipt of the CEC report, in January of 2019, I contacted Terra Verde and asked for their review of the CEC report. A copy of that review is included in your board packet. Suffice it to say that the CEC study was done at the 35,000 foot level. So for example, instead of looking at our energy consumption on 15-minute intervals, it was looked at in 1 hour intervals. And there were several other things that Terra Verde consultant pointed out that should be done prior to doing an in-depth feasibility assessment. So this proposal is for them to provide a complete analysis to include data collection and site due diligence, initial project feasibility assessment and project economics, confirm the project feasibility and cost-benefit analysis, to analyze the feasibility for battery storage, and to complete a feasibility study final report as to what is cost-effective, what size project the district actually needs, which various and sundry tariffs the Southern California Edison has that's available to us, and what our best path forward would be. As you can see from the Terra Verde analysis, the CEC study is several items that need to be further analyzed. And concurrently with the Terra Verde discussion, I want you to also know that we received basically a cold call from a solar company that found out we were interested in solar, and so they said, we want to do a proposal for you. So they did. Took them about 2 months instead of the 4 weeks that was projected. Susan Greer, the assistant general manager, did an analysis of this project. Initially, the REC solar proposal showed that we would have a $6 million savings over the course of 30 years. However, they failed to consider our costs over the 30 years, including either a loan payback or a power purchase agreement. So she found that considering costs over 30 years, their proposal would result in a savings of over 30 years of $3 million. That's a good indicator that the solar will benefit the district in the long term, but not the 11-year payback that the CEC feasibility was indicating. It also indicates to me that REC sort of forgot about our costs in the analysis. There was no mention of how the power purchase agreement would be renegotiated after 20 years. They omitted comment that placing shade structures at the shop would not be cost effective. There's also no mention of specifics relative to land acquisition, site planning, or the use of renewable energy credits using California Government Code 4217.12. So these are just a few of the areas that Eastern Municipal pointed out to me when they also reviewed the REC solar project. So I think that shows that we need to retain an experienced consultant to define the project, coordinate with SCE, Southern California Edison, to handle land acquisition, and eventually manage the request for proposals. And I think that we certainly need at least 3 bids from solar companies for up to a $3 million project. At the last Eastern Municipal request for proposals, handled by Terra Verde, They received bids from companies such as Stronghold, Nextera, Tesla, Sullivan, and REC Solar. Now, interestingly, the proposal by REC Solar was the one that was accepted by Eastern Municipal, but the RFPs were what directed them what to put into their proposals, right? So based on our discussions with Terra Verde and the excellent working relationship they have with Eastern Municipal, we recommend that we move forward with Terra Verde to complete the feasibility assessment for a cost of not to exceed $37,000. If it's approved, then the next steps are to work with the Terra Verde consultant and get him up here to talk to staff. We've already talked to him once, and arrange for him to also do a presentation to the technical advisory committee that we put together of community folks that are interested. And then, in due time, come back to the board with a report and recommendations as to whether or not we should do a power purchase agreement, a lease, a loan, or we should walk away from the idea. So that's the end of the report.
Thank you. Comments from the board?
Thank you. Naturally, solar is a good idea. I was excited when we first started thinking about solar. Gosh, it was probably 7 or 8 years ago. And to see it moving forward, there are other things to consider, and that is cost of repair and the availability of parts long-term for repair. I recently did a solar on my own home. Some of the things I considered. Now, going back to the item at hand, when you go send out for an RFP, it's always good to have the contractors all bidding on the same thing, so you can compare apples to apples. And as you pointed out, there were a lot of things missing on that one proposal you saw.
And a lot of things we didn't know to ask for.
Right. And so I don't like spending money, but the cost of this solar system is going to be high. And the design of that system is imperative it's done right, all the way down to the grading, the site acquisition, and so on. So I'm for it. Don't like spending the money, but Grandpa always said, plan your work, then work your plan.
Were you able to understand much of that proposal? Gary?
Yeah.
I might need your help on this. I mean, it really took me 2 days to read through the Terra Verde proposal and all this stuff. There was a lot of alphabet soup, letters kind of congregate in the bra kind of thing. What do they mean? And, but I was really impressed because the stuff I could understand, obviously, these guys know what they're doing. It's really impressive. Now, you've been out there with Kurt, right?
Right.
And you've seen, like, their operations. What, maybe just go through some of the things, I know things they missed. I mean, kind of a big obvious one was the change in that time of use, which is like now the peak use for energy hours is now going to be from 4 p.m. to 9 p.m. when people are home and turning on their air conditioner and watching TV. What is net metering?
To the best that I understand it would be when you produce solar power from a facility that that goes back into the grid, that you would get credit for that against your
What we don't use.
What we don't use typically, but the net metering has changed. It used to be that you got pretty much 100% benefit, but now there's a slight drop in that, but I couldn't tell you exactly what it is today. I know I got in under the wire for my solar system, and people are still doing it. It's still, pays to go solar, but
Sure
the
is.
energy companies are getting a little bit of, return on that to cover their costs.
Because one of the comments about going to, changing the time of use is, the new peak period definition of 4 to 9 p.m. is a well-documented negative impact on solar photovoltaic systems economics due to reduced net metering, I said NEM, net metering credit value.
Right.
And reduced bill credit for RESBCT. This is not a Aretha Franklin song. That
Right.
stands for, do you know what that is, Gary? Do you know what that
I don't.
is? And neither did I. And I had
Now you got the song ringing in my head.
and it's, RESBCT is SCE's, isn't, Renewable Energy Self-Generation Bill Credit Transfer Tariff.
I think what you're doing is articulating a very good case for why we need Terra Verde, so.
Yeah. And it's really, it's absolutely.
But you know, the
is.
solar energy is produced during the day, and if, they're changing peak to when it's not being generated, that's why we would look at things like battery storage
Yes.
for, and so, so I'll wait and comment when you're.
So you obviously read through all this, you had a better understanding of what they were talking about?
Well, I did, but I think that it is very complicated and technical due to all of those considerations. And I think we need people in the industry that really understand it. There's things like power purchase agreements, and there are companies that can take advantage of credits that we can't take advantage of, so they can essentially build systems cheaper than we could. And what Eastern Municipal is doing with one of their more recent facilities is they have a companies coming in and building it, then they're buying power from them for X number of years, and then after that, the company leaves, they buy the system, and the company moves on and does another one. So that's their business model. So we need to figure out the whole range of options from, like Kurt said, is this feasible, which I believe it is, that it will be beneficial, but we need to find that out. And then if it is, do we want to take out a loan? We can get a loan from the California Energy Commission for 1%. So do we just want to take out a loan and pay for and own our system right out of the gate? Or do we want to just lease the system entirely? Or do we want to do something in between where we lease the facility for a time, have a power purchase agreement, and then we buy it after so many years?
It says here, because at the bottom it says, estimated design build costs do not include the cost of ownership, operation and maintenance, and asset management costs. Therefore, the projected savings may be overstated. In addition, the PV system cost per watt figures stated in the appendices do not include. So he's actually referring to something, but golly, it's just.
Well, yeah, there are a bunch of things. For example, the cost of steel has gone up because of the tariffs that have been enacted, so that has increased the cost of systems, and, all those things need to be looked at. And the price of panels has dropped precipitously, I think 80 or 90% over the last decade or so. So it generally is a feasible thing to do, but there are, it's a dynamic circumstance.
Without going through this whole study here, I'm assuming that, hold on, I'm assuming that Terra Verde, when they come and do the tech report and update, is going to go through this whole thing bit by bit, so sort of this is sort of just an advance now.
They're gonna
that-
school us a
Benefit
bit.
of
Yes.
the viewing audience.
Yes.
Right.
Well, and for the directors, I'm sure we'll be there taking notes, so I'm sure all these questions will be added in detail. So, Director Hunt, do you want to move this along?
I would love to do that.
Yeah, because if you, whatever you saw in here, Gary, that, you can help.
You
help
Would you like
explain.
any comments before
I am very pleased to
What's
doing research.
SGIP? What's an SGIP program?
This is why it says up here, as you can see from Terra Verde's analysis, the CAC study has several deficiencies from the Terra Verde perspective. However, the expertise in the field far exceeds the general manager or anyone on staff, and that includes the board of directors. So
Most definitely.
I have no comments. I think this is a good move forward, and I look forward to hearing what they have to say in detail as we move forward. And I assume that you've looked at this and that there are good recommendations. So with that, I'll entertain a motion that we...
Public comment?
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, look at this.
Oh, we got hands waving.
I apologize.
Gail Austin, Joshua Tree resident. I think it's really important that we take advantage of the sun. We have it and we can use it for energy, and that can leave oil or whatever, coal or whatever for other people to use that need it where they don't have the sun. So even if we broke even, I think it would be important in helping the ecology and all of that sort of thing. But personally, we've done solar on our home and on our business, and things have changed very quickly. And decisions that we made, we needed to be really super informed, because it went from a panel to each individual panel can be separately controlled, where the old system, if one went out, the whole thing went out. Things like that can happen in a heartbeat, and I don't think any of us even want to stay informed about that kind of stuff and block up our brains. So I think it's really important that we do spend the money to find out if it's feasible, what's the best way, and how to go forward from here. So I would encourage the board to vote yes on this. Thank you.
Could I respond real quickly? Oh, sure. I'll wait.
El Marquez, Sunfair Community. I agree that this feasibility study should go forward, but I have a question. Are we talking about a rooftop solar, or are we talking about a solar field, solar farm? Can I get an answer from that?
I can speak to that if you want. Sure. The consultant will be making recommendations. It could be a combination of some solar shade shelters here around the shop and the parking lot, but primarily it would be ground-mounted solar, and it would require 7 to 10 acres to generate all of our electricity for the district. It's a relatively small facility, but it would be a ground-mounted facility.
Okay, so it's both then, it's rooftop and a field, solar field.
Potentially some rooftop,
Potentially,
but definitely
Yeah.
the ground-mounted system.
Okay, and I know the community is aware, and the board should be aware, the community of Joshua Tree and all rural communities within the San Bernardino County have just passed a bill saying that solar fields or solar farms cannot be implemented anymore. We had that one cascade over there in Sunfair area that snuck in without anybody really knowing what was going on, and that Nextera JT solar farm, they went, they wanted to put in their solar farm, but they found out that they couldn't because of the new guidelines that the county has on solar fields. So before you even think about going in with a solar field, you should find out if you can put it in, because that is against the San Bernardino County code.
Utility scale. And they did, the supervisors did look at that. Some are grandfathered in, and we can still have people come to the supervisors who want to put one of these in and get a waiver. So,
Mr. President, I believe if you look at the regulations that were passed, it's utility, commercial scale, either over 50 acres or over 10 acres. We're talking about, REC is correct, 3 acres. If CEC feasibility study is correct, 7 acres. And I happen to think that with all the stuff that California is allegedly doing to be totally coal-free and energy neutral by 2036 or 2056, which I won't have to worry about. We ought to look at purchasing land on a larger basis, and sometime in the future there might even be partners, such as the Morongo Basin Transit Authority, that's going to be required to go to electrical buses. Not the same rate as gas-powered buses because they use natural gas, but eventually they will be. And eventually there will be a tour bus system that actually works in the national park. And they're going to want to go to electric buses. And eventually the technology will catch up, we hope, someday, that utility scale vehicles will actually be able to be run on electrical systems rather than gasoline or diesel. many years in the future, but we ought to be looking at the future rather than the next 3 years. Thank you.
Tom Flo and Joshua Tree North. One of the things that I like about this is that we're going out to a consultant for this rather than assuming that people within these offices know all of this very technical stuff. This is a very strenuous packet of information to read on this. But substantially what I'm seeing is that this California Energy Commission has done some kind of sort of a boilerplate template report on our area, and it doesn't quite fit. It's a shoe that doesn't fit Cinderella's foot. And that it created a need for somebody else to come in and fill in all of the gaps and then do more that only they know they can do. I mean, we probably didn't even know all of the stuff that these Terra Verde folks know about. And so what we're doing is substantially for $37,000, we're buying a specific set of skills for a specific period of time to do a specific job, and when the job is over with, they're gone, except for maintenance things or technical advice and stuff, but they're substantially gone. And so then the $37,000 is all, that fills the bill, because this is very specific about all the stuff they're going to get into, and it's a lot. And I like the idea of a consultant doing this kind of thing rather than trying to permanently hire a person for a specific project, or trying to tune up, to use one of your expressions, Bob, tune up somebody to do this stuff in-house when they've already got a full plate. Thank you very much.
Director Hunt.
Yeah, I primarily wanted to, the comments by Ms. Austin reminded me of something, and that is that, number one, if we do build a solar field, not only is it good for the environment, which I think generally our community supports, but it also fixes our energy rate in time. So as the rates go up, our rate stays the same. And speaking of the environment, I did kind of a back of the napkin estimate by doing some research online, and even our small little facility could prevent 1 million pounds of CO2 from going into our atmosphere each year. That's, maybe it's a drop in the bucket, but it adds to filling that bucket in terms of decreasing human carbon emissions.
Director Lippman.
I have none.
Director Reynolds.
Solar's exciting. The whole thing of it is exciting, and I know we're here to decide, do we hire a consultant? Absolutely. This is so over our head. And there's a lot of ways of dealing with this. Most solar companies will even provide their own design engineering systems, but, and again, I'm all for spending the money to buy this consultant, or to hire this consultant. But the exciting part is the different designs and what we're going to be experiencing coming up. I remember Rancho Cucamonga Water District. I took a tour of their facility years ago, and they distributed their solar system throughout various different areas. They don't have fields they can put up solar. They have to have rooftops and get creative. So they put some panels here, panels over there. They even put up a couple of windmills to help supplement it. But another thing to keep in mind is when our big draw of electricity is the well pumps. And they run currently early in the morning, late at night, to save, that's when the electric rates are low. When we are you're talking about net metering. When we're creating our absorbing the solar energy, that's during the peak of the day when the heat and the sun is bright and it's all working. That'll probably be part of the consultant, and they'll help with that as well. But there's so many designs and so many creative things to do with solar and alternative energy. Let's get moving. let's do this. I've been excited about this since I first heard about it years and years and years ago. And when we first did it, when we first brought it to the board, gosh, this was in 8 or 10, I can't remember what year, it was a long time ago, but we looked into it, and it wasn't cost-effective back then. The cost versus the return just didn't pan out, which is why we didn't go there. And so here we are again, we're moving forward. My goodness, let's do it. And let's hire this consultant and let Mother Nature help us along.
I'm with Mike.
Ready for a motion?
Almost. I just make a comment here that the fact that Mojave Water Agency, I think several years ago, moved to solar for their pumping stations, and the turnaround on that was less than 10 years to repay the loan, and they were going to be basically making some money actually from their pumping station, so I think we're well on the way to go with this. So with that, I'll entertain a motion.
I would like to make a motion. I'd like to move that the board direct the general manager to retain Terra Verde to conduct a feasibility study in order to prepare a request for proposal to install a solar project to offset electrical pumping costs at a cost not to exceed $37,000.
Is there a second to that?
Second.
All right.
Sorry, let Mike get this.
I don't think there's any further discussion. If there isn't, then I'll entertain a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
So moved, so done. Item number 9, GeoViewer. This is AGM Van. Mr. Van.
Thank you. So last year, the board approved staff to move forward with Nobel for the development of a robust GIS system, the development of it, along with some field modules that will assist staff with completing their daily work tasks. This is actually the second phase of that project where it brings into effect a CMMS system, Customer Maintenance and Management System is the wording for that acronym there. It's basically a fancy word for describing a work order management and an asset management program. And so, as you know, the district has a lot of facilities. At each of those facilities, there's a lot of information that needs to be collected, and not only a lot of information, but through repairs and additions that we do to those facilities, we actually need to keep track of those dollars that we expend there, which helps us in the future to determine what our capital needs are and what needs to be replaced. In addition to that, currently with the SIMS program that we use to issue work orders, that information is stored in a database. However, as finance or operation needs that information, it actually has to get manually inputted into the district's billing system Encode. And so there's no ability to connect those two pieces of software. With Nobel's GeoViewer system, which we use for our GIS system currently, that system's actually able, through an API, to connect to Encode, which will allow the district not only to issue work orders out of Encode, which the front office does now, but also be able to use GeoViewer to issue those work orders and to make that bridge between those two programs, so whatever's done out in the field work order wise is automatically transferred over into the billing system for tracking purposes. Currently, staff is asking for the initial setup fees to move forward with this project. It's going to take Nobel anywhere between 4 to 5 months to complete it, just because there's so much data involved with it, and also working with Encode to complete the connection between the API and their system. Those costs include $10,000 for setup fees for Nobel and $5,000 for Encode for their API. In addition to that, just to make the board aware, in addition to the annual fees, there's also, in addition to the setup fees rather, there's also annual fees involved with that. And so you can see on stamp page 59, there's a table there that basically goes over what the district's currently paying and what we would be paying moving forward with the CMMS system involved. The bottom line there, the GeoViewer, GIS, and field module fees is what we currently pay. It's for our GIS system, is $29,000 just to Nobel. And then the additional fees is another $20,000 per year for Nobel, and then another $1,500 for Tyler to maintain that API with Nobel, that connectivity, which totals $21,500 per year. That would bring the district's total annual fees next year, starting in July, to $50,500. I might note that Nobel's actual $20,000 per year fee here, it's basically split into two. $10,000 of those of that money is actually for the CMMS system itself and maintaining it. That other $10,000 is basically for maintaining that connectivity between Encode and Nobel's system. And so as Nobel releases updates or does anything different to that API, Nobel's going to have to respond with updating their system as well. If Tyler doesn't do a lot of work to that, then obviously that $10,000 cost would come down. And so this is worst-case scenario on Nobel's side for the annual fees. And I believe that completes my report. Anything you'd like to add?
Any public comment? Board comments, we'll start this end with Director Hunt.
Not much to say other than I really like the idea of integrating the systems. I think it could be a real time and cost saver. So even though we're having to invest some money, I think we'll save money on the back end and free people up to do other things.
And I agree with Director Hunt. I think he's absolutely right in that having them talk to each other will make a huge difference. And it will keep our records up to date, which has not been happening.
Director Reynolds.
We're already moving forward, why stop?
Amen.
Well, I take that as a motion. I have a motion and recommend that the Board of Directors consider approving Nobel Systems and moving forward with the creation of customer maintenance management system to include integration with Tyler Encode, a district's billing system, may amount not to exceed $15,000 for setup fees. Is there such a motion?
I guess I just made that motion, I guess.
Is there a second?
I second it.
All right, all those in favor,
Aye.
signify by saying aye.
Aye.
So moved, so seconded, and approved.
Thank you.
All right, item number 10, discussion of committee minute meetings, general manager's hour.
So, recommendation is that the board discuss how they want to handle the minutes for the committee meetings. At the April 17th board meeting, Director Reynolds stated he'd like to have an agenda item to discuss the minutes of the committee meetings. So here it is. Just so you know, the committee minutes are created for each committee meeting. That includes the Finance Committee, the Water Resources and Operations Committee, the Legislative and Public Information Committee, and the Citizens Advisory Committee. The minutes are reviewed and approved by each committee at each successive meeting. The minutes are posted along with the agendas for each committee meeting on the JBWD webpage. When the Finance and Water Resources Ops Committee agenda packets are posted, each board member, whether they're on the committees or not, receives a hard copy of the Finance and Water Resources Ops Committee agenda packets in their director's box. Each of the agenda packets has the minutes from the previous committee meeting in the agenda packet. So that's how we're currently handling it, and I recommend we continue to handle it the way they are, but we're here to listen to board input
All right.
and direction.
Start with Director Hunt, we'll go down that end.
Oh, lucky me. Well, I'm comfortable with the current system. I know the minutes, the committee meeting minutes are pretty abbreviated. We don't have the same administrative staff support for those, and I guess it's just a question of, whether or not we'd want to make a commitment to providing more detailed minutes. But I personally think that based on my experience, what happens is we have these things are laid out to us in pretty great detail in the committee meetings, and then we discuss it, and then staff, based on the interaction with the committee members and with the public, prepares detailed staff reports on each item that are made in our general meeting, where I think we get a synopsis of that includes the discussion and the input in those meetings. So I think the system's working, and I'd be comfortable maintaining it the way it is.
I agree with that, and I would say that if you want more detail of what happened to the meeting, at the meeting, come to the meeting. There is no point in going through this whole thing and getting a detailed agenda or minutes for someone who just didn't come. Because those of us who are interested are there.
All right, Director Reynolds.
Okay. This all started, committee meetings make recommendations. And it came to my attention that a committee meeting made a recommendation, and it was on the agenda, but there were no minutes. There was nothing saying what the committee meeting said. And then I asked about it and said, well, we don't have those meetings, they're not available. That's what started the whole thing. And so maybe I'm confused. Maybe there's something all funny going on, but I asked, I had a whole thing I prepared, a speech and everything I wrote out, and now I'm a little concerned. When a committee meeting has their meeting, they make a recommendation, and they will bring that recommendation to the board. Are there or are there not minutes in that packet that the committee meeting recommended?
Yes, there are committee meeting minutes of each meeting, and they're included. So if you meet on the 1st of the month and you have a meeting, there's going to be minutes that are prepared. If you meet on the 1st of the next month, that committee reviews the minutes from their previous committee, and they approve them, and then those are posted as approved in the next committee meeting.
Okay, so when do they come to the board? When a committee meeting, or when a committee makes a recommendation, how is that recommendation formally presented to the board then? I remember there weren't minutes on the agenda for the board to look at, to follow up or to reiterate what the committee recommended. Am I completely off base here?
Well, let me just say that the minutes are written.
Mm-hmm.
They're approved by the committees on the following committee meeting, right? So whatever is decided and recommended by the committee, basically the committee has a staff report that spells out why we're recommending that it be forwarded to the board for approval. If there's any changes recommended by the committee, those are incorporated in the staff report. They're recorded in the minutes, and they're incorporated into the staff report that's presented to the board when it's brought to the board for approval. The committees do not approve anything. They forward with a recommendation to the board that this issue be approved, but it's up to the entire board to make that decision. And it's in the administrative code that committees cannot make decisions that are reserved to the board.
It has nothing to do with committees making decisions. It's the committees are making recommendations. Is that, that's...
If I understand this correctly, I don't mean to interrupt, I think, help me out here, Mike, if this is what Director Reynolds is saying, that when the agenda comes to us here at a board meeting, those minutes are not in our packet. Those minutes from the committee meetings are in the committee packets.
Correct.
And have been approved. So what you'll see on your agenda is, or the proposal is recommended by the da-da-da-da-da committee, but you will not see the minutes. Those minutes are in the packets for those various committees.
And that's what
But
I'm
they're
requesting.
also, but they are also available to every board member in their director cubbies, because when the Water Resources and Ops Committee and the Finance Committee meet, every board member receives a copy of the agenda that has the minutes that have been approved from the last meeting. And then, so you're receiving it in your cubbies, and it's also available online.
I think what I hear you saying is, are you asking that those minutes be included in the agenda items?
Yes, if a committee makes a recommendation, and this is a matter of transparency. I asked these questions to Jim Ventura, MWA, and got his input. And I also talked to Marina West at Mojave Water, the largest and the smallest, and asked them how they handle their committee meetings and minutes. And they both record them Mojave Water Agency not only does that, but they broadcast it live. You can listen to their committee meetings on a cell phone. That's extreme, but that's what they do. And boy, Jim that was important to him, especially the transparency, the possibility of being accused of smoke-filled rooms and decisions made behind doors and stuff. I want to make things as upfront and as obvious as possible that we are transparent. So when it comes to a board decision, and the decision is based off of a committee's recommendation, and so there are minutes, why can't that be in the agenda? Transparency, transparency, transparency. Let's go above and beyond to make sure it's transparent. And there are no thoughts or possibilities of being accused of being unethical or smoke-filled rooms and all that other stuff. It's an agenda item that becomes with a recommendation. And so, yeah, I feel that's very important. So that's where I'm at. It's all about transparency. It's about looking and being as straight up and as honest as you can be. And so I'm seeing everybody looking at me and going, what?
Mike,
Laughing at me and whatever.
Mike, if I might add,
But it's how I feel.
I don't think you see on the Mojave Water Agency or any other agency meetings, minutes of the previous committee meeting. They will have, pretty much like we have, recommendation, but I do hear what you're saying about the copies and what General Manager Sauer is saying, and they are in our packets. I mean, so if they're not detailed enough
Right.
at those meetings, then maybe that's another issue. But in terms of the board agenda, those committee meeting notes are already recorded. So to include them on this would be quite cumbersome, I would imagine. But I don't know anybody else that's doing that. And I do like the idea of having transparency, so that's, certainly there. So if there's something we can do to tighten that up, but I don't want to go back to the day where we're having all the committee meetings at the board meetings. We'll be here a couple, 3 days.
Of course. No, I'm not asking for that. I just want to make sure we are open and clear and
I think we're
above
in
board.
compliance. Are we not in compliance?
Well, it's within your discretion. Mike's idea is fine, your idea is fine.
I love attorneys.
It's a matter, Robert, it's a matter of balance. On important, significant issues, you want to beef up the minutes a little bit, and you don't want to be so sterile. It's a judgment call.
Okay.
Why can't they be recorded?
I think they are, aren't they? They're not, they could be. We have that discretion.
Yeah, they're not recorded.
So,
If they were recorded, you could ask for a disc and satisfy yourself that way.
MWA records them, and so does Bighorn. They record the committee meetings. Is there
They
a
don't do it
reason we
under
couldn't
legal
do that
compulsion,
here?
but they do it as a
Or
discretion.
why would we want to or not want to?
Money.
have the floor.
Yes, sir.
How much money does that cost?
Well, maybe.
The smallest agency in the Morongo Basin records their meetings, their committee meetings. Why are we so concerned about, I don't know, I'm uncomfortable. I'm uncomfortable. And it all started when I had to make a decision. And I did not see those minutes. And I wanted to see those minutes, and that's when I asked about them. And they weren't on the board packet. And they could have been available another day, another way, another how, but I didn't see those. And so when I was looking at it, and trying to make a decision, I didn't see the minutes. How can I make a decision if I don't have minutes? And that's where it all started, that's where it all came from. I just didn't see the minutes, and I sure would have liked to, and that would have helped out tremendously.
Director Hunt?
So,
Director Hunt?
So, a couple things. One, I was going to say something similar to what our counsel just said, and I think that first let me state something else, back up a little bit. General Manager Sauer said something important, and that's that those recommendations are brought from staff to the committee and discussed, and then they're sometimes modified, and then the final recommendation is brought to the full board. So that gives an opportunity for members of the board on the committee to help shape the recommendation. But what I was going to say is, I had the same thought. If we have a particularly weighty decision and the input of the board members changes the recommendation, whatever that input was could be recorded as part of the committee minutes. In other words, they could be beefed up a little bit so that a board member, if, once the minutes are posted, could review the minutes and have a clear understanding of what took place that led to the final recommendation. So I'm just talking about maybe a minor change that would, in recognition of when a change is made to a staff recommendation due to discussion with the subcommittee members, that you summarize what that was.
Good point. Ms. Beverly?
Oh, I
Would you
just wanted to
please?
make a comment too. Director Reynolds, I was just going to say that every time those committee meeting minutes and something is approved, the staff report is updated to show what the committee approved, and that's in your board packet. So everything the committee has said is basically in your staff report in the board meeting packet.
Well, thank you. I'll be looking for that.
They always are.
Okay.
Well, I always seem to notice in those minutes that when I object to something, it seems to be always in there. That seems to be rather consistent.
I would say, Kathleen, for the public information list, you do absolutely detailed minutes.
I know, I don't have to, but I just do.
But you do absolutely detailed. And I know the finance and the water ops they're a little terse. They do say that this was, that the committee approved passing this on to the board, the committee approved passing this on to the board. And then when you get it, when it finally comes to you, it will say, this went through the finance committee, or this was reviewed in the water ops. As for making them more detailed, like, this, is that what you're talking about, the discussion came up before about what went into the decision with why the committee, was that what you were?
No, yeah, there was, and I can go back and find out what, but there was an item on the agenda, and the committee made a recommendation. I wanted to see what the committee had to say.
So you
And
want more detail?
no, as I looked through my packet, there were no minutes for that
From that
recommendation.
From that,
And so I asked staff, where are the minutes for that recommendation? They weren't on here. And your response was, we don't normally do that. And so now I'm hearing something completely different. So I'm going to look through the minutes, I'm going to look through the records, and if they're not there, or if they are there, well, then I'm wrong.
well, where they
But
were,
I wanted to base my decision on minutes, not hearsay, and that's what it's all, where I'm coming from.
so when you get your next water ops agenda, a packet, it'll have the printed agenda on the one side, right, the this. On the other side of it is the minutes from your last meeting, we'll have the minutes, it'll be one page. And the same thing with the finance committee. The straight Bear Board's agenda will have what we're gonna talk about on one page, and then the minutes, and then we'll say, whatever the topic was, approved to recommend, send to the board, recommend and send to the board, table it, bring back for more discussion. And that is the minutes, and they will be, and you'll get a copy of like the finance committee meetings, right? You get those as well? Look, and that will be the minutes of what we did at the last meeting, same thing for the water ops, same thing for legislative, stuff like that. So that's where you would see, and then by the time it comes back to, but I see what you mean, because there might be a lapse or it's speeded up. Maybe we had a finance meeting the week before we had the thing going to the agenda. And all it would say is that this was recommended by the finance committee to come to the full board.
Sure. And if there is a recommendation by a committee, And there's even a reference where I can go find those minutes, and if they're coming from 2 weeks ago, the last committee meeting they had, and I can go back and look at that, I can make my 1/5 vote based on what I would do my background, my soul search, rather than hearsay. That's my whole thing.
Well, other than,
and so
there
if
wouldn't be
there's-
any discussion about it. It would actually be on.
If there are minutes or some kind of a recording, and if that already exists, well, then that's my bad.
We didn't have anything like that.
But on that
this time.
one agenda item, I couldn't find it, and that's what started it all. I could not find it. And so I want to
might make a
have,
suggestion, and
the ability to make a
let's see how this-
decision.
Let's see how it goes in the future here.
I'll be looking carefully.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you.
And if they're not adequate, then we'll come back and explore maybe some other options. So with that in mind, can I just?
There's no action item, so.
No action on item 10?
No.
No
It's just
action, so
discussion.
So seconded, so we'll move on to item number 11.
GC report, no significant report, but something did come to my attention this week that kind of goes along with the subject of your matter of your elections. What I'm seeing come across my desk are inquiries by political activist groups asking what are the terms of your district's officers? Isn't that interesting? So what that does signal to me, Gary, is that there are political activists out there that are thinking of getting a survey compiled and targeting special districts, perhaps, on getting state legislation to limit the terms of elected officials. Just want to put you, maybe other agencies that you'll meet up at Aqua will have experienced a similar type of inquiries. But they've been coming across my desk, and that signals to me that
Term limits are on the.
they're on somebody's radar, political activist groups.
Term limits for a
Isn't that interesting? Because cities don't have term limits except they do it themselves by internal rules and regulation, nor do water districts. There's no state mandate as to it.
Yeah.
Unlike legislators of the governor's term and things like that. Just want to let you know, it was interesting to me.
All right, thank you. Item number 12, General Manager's Report.
Okay, we have several things. We'll start off with Sarah.
Good evening. I was just going to give you an update on our hiring. We have offered and the person accepted a contracts and purchasing administrator position. So that person will be starting in the middle of May. So we filled our office assistant position. That person will also be starting in the middle of May. We have just concluded our CIRP crew interviews and testing. We're almost done, and we're getting very close to making offers for those positions too. So we anticipate everybody to be on board, and hopefully by the end of June.
Mr. Mark, thank you.
Perfect. So a couple different things to discuss. As promised, staff is bringing back to you the bid results of our April 23rd bid closing for the purchase of our CRP pipe for the Saddleback project. And so I believe you each have a printout of this, but these are our two bids. At the meeting, we had discussed that primarily we'd have two different companies bidding on our pipe and material for these types of projects. The first being Core and Main, and the other being Inland Waterworks, both large reputable companies in our area. This time around, Core and Main actually won the bid at $181,239.97. However, that was really close, with Inland falling right up behind at $182,000, $303.30. So if you remember last time we had discussed this, that, you know, they'll kind of bounce back and forth between who ends up getting awarded the bid. So this time around, it was $1,063 that they were short on, so closest I've ever seen it. The really good news also, if you remember, we had discussed an estimate of what this would come in at that meeting. I had budgeted actually $220,000 based on the pipe pricing at that time, which was about $8 a foot. We actually received pricing, you can see here, for the bulk of the order, which is 25,000 feet of 8-inch pipe. It actually came in at a bid price of $588 a foot. And so, you know, about well over $2 a foot decrease. So saved us about $50,000 in the back end of that. So, and again, you know, purchasing pipe around this time of year, you know, as winter kind of wraps up, early spring, we receive the better pricing on that. So, as well, just to go over our current recharge activity, High Desert Water had to actually perform some maintenance, and so they've reduced their flow, allowing us to increase our flow from the original 1,200 to 1,400 gallons a minute we were flowing to 2,800 gallons per minute. We're expected to reduce that flow as time of use starts around May 23rd for MWA. But currently, right now, we're flowing 12.37 acre feet per day, and yet-to-date deliveries of the water is 205 acre feet, and we're expecting deliveries to wrap up on June 23rd, 24th, right in that area, which is good because, as General Manager Sauer had brought to the board previously, we're trying to get that in before the fiscal year starts up because of the increases to the rates on that. So should be able to fit all of our deliveries in there with no increased costs and the savings, I believe, $14,000, I think it was. So let's see. Then in addition to that, we had some brown water that occurred down in the downtown area yesterday, through this morning a little bit. It was an isolated incident, probably due to higher demand. Subway, the Three Sisters Cafe had called in with some issues. Staff responded and did a good job flushing and cleaning that line up. Not seeing any other issues out there, but if asked out in public, it looks like the district's been able to handle that issue moving forward. Also had a couple inquiries about well 14, the discussion we had surrounding 4-log treatment and the addition of chlorine to the water there, and some concern that, you know, there might be a possibility that we'd be increasing the chlorine level as part of that treatment process. And again, just to kind of reiterate, the chlorine that would be applied would be close to the same level that we're doing now. The treatment technique just allows that chlorine to be in contact with the water for a longer period of time before it's introduced into the distribution system. So customers shouldn't see an increase in chlorine taste and odor as a result of that project coming online. And I believe that's it for me.
Okay, my turn. So, if you haven't gone to the demonstration garden in the last 2 weeks, you should go. It's absolutely gorgeous now. It was really pretty at the Water Education Day, but since that time and the weather that we've had, the ocotillo are blooming. The roses are out in full force. No clipping them and taking them to your significant other or partner. Leave them alone. Also, after Water Education Day every year, there's 2 or 3 days when some cactus and surplus plants are left out by the picnic table. And this year, unfortunately, Kathleen came and got them too early, because after she got them, somebody moved our picnic table. In the process, they broke the bench, and they moved it so that they could reach up and cut down one of the shade cloths. So one of the shade cloths has been cut and removed, and the picnic table has been destroyed. Not very many public use it. The employees don't use it, and so I'm going to make a decision, unless the board wants to get into the details of the operation of the district, that we are removing that shade structure and that picnic table in such a manner as the other desert tree that's growing out there, which I can't remember what it is right now, is not damaged, and it'll provide shade about 4 or 5 years from now. So emergency preparedness. The California OES, remember we had the October storm. We put in an initial claim for about $16,000 to $20,000. That was only about 3 weeks ago. They called us yesterday. They called us Monday, and they have set up a site inspection for May 15th. And they will be sending out 1 or 2 inspectors, a couple of whom are being trained by Cal OES because they are so overwhelmed, because they are also working on the fires that occurred in California, in that area. So we expect approximately $16,000 to $20,000 to be recovered from that process that we went through. And now the crew knows the process, and we have good contacts with Cal OES, who of course doesn't have any turnover in their personnel. And so when the next event happens, we'll have good contacts. The emergency response plan has been completed. We need to bring it to the board for approval in the next month. The local hazard mitigation plan, which has been approved by Cal OES, was sent to FEMA. FEMA sent back a couple of comments that needed to be worked on. That's been completed and it's been sent back to FEMA. I received information today from the county that the Dollar General people have pulled their permits. Now, pulled their permits in this sense means they've gotten their permits issued and they're going to they're starting the process of the Dollar General construction. It does not mean that they pulled them back like Altamira did. Okay, so I just want to take a moment to recognize staff. In 2015, Steve Corbin received the Water Industry Employee of the Year Award from the California AWWA. And that was one of the examples I used in the discussions we had for Employee Recognition and Awards Program. Just to remind you that from 2016 through 2018, Ann Roman receives each year an Ambassador Award from Tyler Technologies for her ideas and improvements to their billing software. So we're going to use her to interface with GeoViewer, and we'll pay her the $1,500 to manage the API, not Tyler. Our first Employee Recognition and Award went to Autumn Rich a couple weeks ago because one of our vendors' emails had been hacked, and they got the information and they sent us an invoice to pay that vendor to some firm back in New York. And Autumn said, this isn't right. We don't do this type of stuff. And brought that to Beverly's attention and a couple other people's attention. And so she saved us sending a $15,000 electronic payment to a fraudulent individual or group. And it goes on, each day, each week, each month, throughout the year. Field staff continues to do their job. Water quality concerns and repair of leaks. We know they do a great job. Our water comes out of our taps. We've come to expect it. And it's because they're always there. Each day, I'm going to get in trouble for this one, Beverly continues to keep me on the straight and narrow. She provides excellent service to the board, witness the recent filings of your 700 forms, and to other employees. She is now the go-to person when there are internet technology issues, and she is now the interface with Southwest for all things internet. And she also takes care of the phones, which still befuddle me. Somehow they're hooked up to the internet and you can still talk on them, but you can't text. I haven't understood that yet. Our customer service staff and finance as well continue to do excellent work out of your site to provide excellent customer service. And we're just humming along. And tonight, I wanted to share with you another example of the work of our people, oftentimes unbeknownst to all of you. March 14th, 2018, Sarah Johnson contacted Aqua JPIA with an idea for contracting out insurance tracking requirements. She thought it would be a good idea for all members of the pool. The following day, the JPIA Risk Manager Office contacted Sarah and informed her that because of her exhaustive efforts and her description of the solutions available to these problems, the JPIA was going to look into the idea. Fast forward 13 months. On April 16th, we were informed, Sarah was informed, the JPIA is now beta testing a web-based certificate of insurance tracking system with an intended rollout in September of 2019, and we're part of that beta testing. And of course, Sarah's first question to them was, will this be free? And the answer is yes, it will be free to all Aqua JPIA members. And if you will recall, the board approved us hiring a company that does this type of work for $7,000 a year. If this beta test proves out, and they roll it out in September, our contract expires in the fall. And because of Sarah's suggestion to Aqua JPIA, we and all the other water districts will be saving untold numbers of dollars in their insurance program. So just another example of the excellent performance on the part of all of the employees at this water district that I am proud to be associated with. And that's the end of my report.
Good report.
Thank you.
Item
Thank you.
13, director's comments and reports on meetings attended. Public outreach consultant Kathleen.
Well, happy May Day, everyone. The first of 4 wildcrafting classes begin this Friday. There are 5 Fridays in May, and we will be meeting for 4 of them. The class is pretty full, pretty exciting. We just last night completed our summarizing class, teaching people the opposite of winterizing, how to expand their water systems cost effectively, how to minimize water loss in our heat, and a lot of the mistakes people make when they've installed drip irrigation that actually add to water loss. It was a good class. We had about 14 people in attendance. A lot of questions. It actually went longer than we thought, but it was a good class, and these people, most of them were Joshua Tree people, so we'll benefit. I'll be at the market with a new theme. It's Tortoises Live, and I'm hopeful there'll be babies. I picked them up on Friday. But we will be teaching water conservation utilizing the live baby tortoises or whatever they give me. The new MAC is meeting May 13th at 5:30 p.m. and Kurt Sauer is the guest presenter talking about water in Joshua Tree. Be there. I'm sure it'll be riveting, right? May 16th, I will be teaching 400 junior high students on water conservation. And that's an all-day event at the La Contenta Junior High School. A reminder that we are closed Memorial Weekend Monday. And while I'm at that, the same weekend, I have been notified by Kix Hot Country radio station that they're looking to rerun our Water Wise and Ready earthquake preparation, emergency water, step-by-step what to do. It's a whole series. It's about 13 episodes. So they're looking to start rerunning that whole series. So that's good for us. So anyway, thank you very much.
Mojave Water Agency Board of Directors meeting on April 25th. Director Reynolds.
That was me. Started off with a nice drive down Highway 247, only to be greeted with the traffic repair crews. So they are still continuing their repair on the road, and 1 lane only. And I'm looking at my clock, and I'm waiting, but boy, I made it, and I was still on time. Good thing I got a Corvette. The meeting, whenever you see the word workshop at a Mojave Water Agency meeting, make sure you got a full cup of coffee and a comfortable seat. Their workshops are like our committee meetings, only they do that in the main meeting. They're exhaustive, they go through them completely, and they're very clearly discussed. There's no misunderstanding what's going on. Today, that current meeting was about the draft budget for the fiscal year of 2019 and 20, with all the discussion of cash reserves and where money is going and what is spent. I wish we had Mojave's budget. They've got some nice, the numbers look good. But Director Ventura is the Budget Committee Chairman, and he went into great lengths to explain, you have cash reserves, and that number is X, and I have it right here, but there's no need to say it, but what those numbers are for. You know, it's not just we have $90 million in the bank and aren't we happy? Money is spoken for. You have cash reserves, but you are budgeted for certain things, and all the way down to the what-ifs. And so when it was all said and done, they gave a pretty good explanation on their riveting budget of all of that. And I can't think of a single meeting we've had that hasn't discussed how riveting finances are. So that took up most of the meeting. There was a consent calendar, and they approved bills and directors and, and all of that stuff. But it does present a good opportunity to interact with other members of various agencies, and especially maintain a good relationship with Mojave Water Agency. And so all in all, it was a good day. I do like the idea of it early in the morning, and no more late night hours driving home that lonely, dangerous highway.
Thank you for the report.
Thank you. Director Reynolds' comments about Mojave Water Agency reminded me that I received an email today from Tom McCarthy's executive assistant, Michelle Doyle, right? And the inquiry was, he's wondering if the board would like him to come down and give a presentation sometime in May or June. I responded, yes, probably in late May or early June. And I've asked what the topics would be. But just so you know, that invitation was received by the general manager of the Mojave Water Agency.
Well, thanks for mentioning that. They also talked about banking into great lengths, and I see wonderful opportunities, maybe in that meeting, to talk more about being a recipient of banking MWA water more and more.
Yeah, we have an existing agreement with them, which they haven't used yet, but if they've got extra water, we have extra aquifer.
Yeah, it's like solar fountain, or banking water is a good deal.
Right, moving on to item 14, future director meetings and training opportunities. That most riveting finance committee meeting is scheduled for May 8th. We may have to move that.
I would appreciate it if you moved that, because I'd like to go to that meeting.
All right, so the finance committee meeting will probably be moved and...
No, the general manager is telling me no. No. He must have something that must be approved because of timing, so.
I have a conflict with May 8th is my issue, so we don't have a date yet.
I thought maybe you would move it to the next day,
No.
the following Wednesday, when everybody's back from Waco.
That's sort of what we were planning with, that the other board members wanted to attend.
That's the same day as the board meeting, which is fine with me. I'll be here.
I thought that there was actually another committee meeting on that next Wednesday. No, I don't see it, so maybe not.
The CAC is on Tuesday.
Wednesday, May 15th, I shall finance the board, yes, so that would work for me. I'll be back.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Can you live with that?
Gary,
Checking.
Michael,
Doesn't matter to
May
me.
15th?
tentatively?
Woo-hoo.
Can we do that, Gail? Tom? I think so.
Hang on just a second. I could do it on the 15th,
Well, we'll propose the 15th, that needs...
but
We'll get it posted by
Okay.
Friday. Right now, tentatively, the 15th at 9 a.m. for the Riveting Finance Committee. And, pardon, 9 a.m.? And we might reschedule the Water Resources because the Finance Committee is potentially going to take longer, because it's my intention to bring the initial draft budget to the Finance Committee so that we can bring it to the board on May 15th for general discussion, so that we can prepare it for June 1st and hopefully have it past June 1st, and if not, June 15th.
Well, Director Reynolds made a suggestion, get a cup of coffee and a soft chair and be ready to roll. The Water Resources and Operations Committee meeting, May 8th, is canceled due to Aqua. Mojave Water Agency Board of Directors, May 9th is also canceled. The Association of San Bernardino County Special Districts Dinner is May 13th, and hopefully the board will attend. And Citizens Advisory Committee is scheduled for the 14th. With that, I'll ask for direct comments. Director Hunt?
I think the only comment I have is, well, in addition to, I really wanted to also compliment Sarah. I think that's just phenomenal what you did, and I love seeing that kind of initiative and creativity, and it's, you know, it's how improvements happen, how things get done. Is really appreciate it. And I also just want to comment on, I wanted to thank General Manager Sauer and the staff for moving the ball forward and getting the local hazard mitigation plan to FEMA. We've been working on that for a while, the collective we, and I've been a real proponent of that all along, because we can do it, qualify to do advanced mitigation projects, which will help to reduce the damage when catastrophic events occur. And we will also now be eligible unequivocally for disaster relief that we would not have otherwise been, not have otherwise qualified for. And when you consider things like the big one, the San Andreas quake is, you know, on average something like 166 years overdue for a major eruption. Well, when that day comes, whenever it does, this district will be really glad that we have that local hazard mitigation plan in place. So thank you for your diligence.
I just thank you very much for moving the committee meetings so that I can attend them. I appreciate that. And look forward to Aqua and bringing back some really good information.
Director Reynolds?
Well, Aqua is coming up next week. We're looking forward to it. Should be hopefully very informative, and we'll come back with some knowledge, useful knowledge. Sarah, good job.
Thank you, Kurt, very much for the great information on our great employees. I really appreciate that. That's wonderful. And so glad we have everybody. This is a great district, and we're moving into the 21st century with everything. My gosh, you know, what we'll be able to do. And the point that Director Hunt has made about what you call advanced planning for disasters and stuff, advanced mitigation, you said.
Yeah.
I mean, we're going to be able to do it. Thank you for your guidance.
Thank you.
And I'd like to ditto that and say thanks to the staff. Thanks for each and every one that showed up here today. And also want to thank our men and women in uniform and those first responders. And with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
And we adjourn.
Second? So moved. So closed.